Alright, our next episode is called Conspiracy, and it is episode number 25. It originally aired on May 7th, 1988. It was written by Tracy Torme, and the story was by Robert Zabaroff, and it was directed by Cliff Bull. And plot-wise for this episode, while the Enterprise is en route to Pacifica on a scientific mission, Captain Picard suddenly receives a highly confidential message from his old pal, Captain Walker Keel of the USS Horatio. And Keel refuses to talk about his concerns, even though the frequency is supposed to be a secure channel, and he says they can only talk about it in a face-to-face meeting. So they arrive at a planet called Detalix B for their secret meeting, and the crew discover that the Horatio and two other Federation ships are already there. So Picard beams alone to the surface and is met by Walker Keel and the other captains. And Keel reports some strange orders from Starfleet headquarters, and he's implying that there's some suspicious deaths of Starfleet officers, and he feels that there is some kind of conspiracy that is brewing in the Federation. Now, Picard doesn't accept this without any proof, but Walker says that he should watch his back and be ready for it. Now, when the captain returns to the Enterprise, Counselor Troi challenges Captain Picard, for not revealing what's going on, and for holding back on what Walker is telling them, but he says he trusts his friend completely. But he does give Data a special task. He puts Data to work analyzing the recent Starfleet command decisions, and Data soon reports that his study reveals a covert attempt to control certain key sectors of the Federation. So Picard wants some answers, and they set a course for Earth. And as soon as the ship enters orbit, several of the admirals at Starfleet headquarters invite Picard to come down to dinner. Seems like a very casual thing to do. And Admiral Gregory Quinn, who we saw back in Coming of Age, says he can't attend, but he wants to visit the Enterprise. So just after Quinn beams up, Picard realizes that something's going wrong, because he talks to Quinn, and Quinn seems to not give a very thorough explanation, or gives kind of a strange explanation, because previously we had seen Quinn and he felt like there was something wrong, and now Quinn says, "Oh, you took me too literally," and he knows something's up, that this man is not Admiral Quinn. So he tells Riker to stay with Quinn and watch everything that he does. And meanwhile, Picard beams down for dinner. So when Riker arrives at Quinn's quarters, for some reason Quinn tries to force him to view this new form of life that's a beetle-like life form. Now Riker refuses to do this, so Quinn decides to kick the tar out of him, which is pretty surprising because Quinn is an older man, probably at least in his 60s, if not older. So he beats him up, but Riker does call security, and LaForge and Worf charge to the rescue. Unfortunately, Quinn beats them up pretty easily too. And just before Quinn is able to escape, Dr. Crusher is able to zap him with a phaser, and that finally takes him out. Now Crusher completes her examination of Quinn, and Picard calls into the ship just to figure out what's going on. And Crusher tells Picard that a beetle-like creature has attached itself to the base of Quinn's brain, and that through that he controls his mental and physical functions. Now Picard proceeds to the dinner, only to realize that the whole room is infested with these creatures. They're all ingesting all these bugs for their dinner, and Picard immediately knows that something's wrong. And shortly after, Riker beams down, and even he appears to be part of the conspiracy too, but thankfully he's just pretending to trick the rest of the people in the room. So as soon as everyone falls for this, Riker pulls out a phaser and attacks them, and Picard and Riker then discover that the conspiracy's leader is none other than Commander Remick, who we saw from Coming of Age. And Remick claims that the aliens seek peaceful coexistence, but Picard and Riker obviously don't believe him, and in response they take two phasers and they blow up Remick's head, literally. This is one of the most graphic scenes that I've actually seen on The Next Generation. And they then kill the mother creature that is inside of Remick's body. So quite a gruesome end to the show, but that is the end of this episode. Now, this show was actually an original idea from none other than Gene Roddenberry, of all people. And what he did is, in a single sentence, he proposed a title called The Assassins. And this was actually planted, as you guys remember, if you've watched my review of Coming of Age, this was kind of alluded to. And this is the episode where the payoff happens. Now, from that single sentence that Gene Roddenberry had, Robert Zabaroff expanded the idea to 30 pages, but that version was seen as too expensive, so Tracy Torme was then given the job of rewriting it. And some of the producers thought the new version was too dark, but Gene actually looked at it and he endorsed the new version. He actually liked it. One of the original versions actually had a faction of Starfleet who were conspirators instead of alien parasites, but Roddenberry didn't like showing Starfleet itself being that dark. We had to blame it on the aliens. Starfleet would not go in that direction. Now, the director of the episode, Cliff Bull, was actually a school friend of makeup supervisor Michael Westmore, so there is some connection there. I also want to point out that the scene with Remick at the end of the episode, which really, as I mentioned, has one of the more gruesome scenes. As you can see in this picture, that's the mother alien there. That was added in post-production, because originally Riker and Picard were supposed to come face-to-face with the full-sized mother creature, and there was no Remick there. But I have a feeling a lot of the fans had just as much disdain for Remick as I did in Coming of Age, and there was nothing more fitting than to see poor Remick get his head busted open by Picard and Riker. I thought that was a good payoff there. So let's talk a little bit about that gruesome scene at the end. Well, the part where the parasite enters Remick's throat. Reportedly, it took too many takes because of the bulging effect that was made by Westmore blowing air bladders under a false neck. So that took quite a while. The parasites themselves were created by Makeup and Effects Laboratories from a design by Rick Sternbach, and also a mold of Paul Newman's face was actually filled with raw meat, and they blew it up to create the effect used when Picard and Riker fire on Remick. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if somebody had it in for poor Paul Newman, but that's what they used. And both Rick Berman and Peter Lorreson, they were the producers of Star Trek, they were concerned that it might be too graphic, and it is, as I've said, the most graphic thing I've seen. So Dan Curry, who worked with the show, he invited his 6-year-old son to watch the episode in order to test how children would react to it. And actually his son liked it so much that he suggested the creation of a Remick action figure where the head would blow up by pressing a button, which I thought was pretty funny. So it resulted in Berman deciding to air the entire episode with the full sequence uncut, although it was initially banned in certain places, I think the UK, and it did come with a warning in Canada. Now, the reaction to this episode was very polarizing. Either you loved this episode or you hated it. Some reviewers called it really nasty and just didn't fit into the rest of Star Trek, and some people even listed it among the best episodes of Star Trek, The Next Generation. I definitely would classify this one as probably my favorite episode of the first season. A lot of the first season episodes were kind of so-so, and I liked parts of it, but definitely season 1 is the weakest. But this one really stood out. I think that they did take a lot of chances in the first season, and this one, for me, really paid off. I don't know if any of you guys are Aliens fans, but certainly reminded me of that. And I like that darker aspect to this episode. I think it made it kind of fun. And I really wish they had more of these type of, or at least a continuation of this story beyond this episode. But this is the last we see of it, and it was just really well done. And like I said, I think it's really funny to see poor Remick get blown up. that tops it off for me. So I loved Conspiracy. I hope you guys did too. And stay tuned for the final episode of the first season called The Neutral Zone.